What's up, everybody? My name is Ojari Brown, and welcome back to another episode of On the Daily. Now, for today's episode, we're just going to be really just going over everything NFL, being that the season is about time you're seeing this kicks off in just less than a week, and as teams start to ramp up and game plan for the upcoming season, things will start to, get a little hot with teams making their final cuts, players, trades and everything like that. So we're just going to be getting down and just discussing all the general things that are going on in the NFL. And towards the end, we'll get into some more topics and, discuss some things more in depth a little bit. But before we start, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And Thursday night, Chiefs, Lions. Let me know who you got. So for the first order of news, I just want to show you some notable players on the PUB list or who've been placed on the PUB list and, what to expect from these teams and these players and, how these will affect the teams with names such as Jonathan Taylor, Von Miller, and Kyler Murray. Now, there's been a lot of other players that have been placed on the PUB list, but these are just some notable names that I just want to go over real quick and that I think are more of a story and, have a little bit more impact. So firstly, starting off with Jonathan Taylor, when you look at his situation in the Colts, it's obvious that, there's been trade talk going around. Jonathan Taylor wants out, and the Colts are trying to figure out what to do. With the Colts playing hardball on paying Jonathan Taylor, and then Jonathan Taylor just saying, hey, I want out, and his situation with him going back and forth, and I think it's pretty clear that they've placed Jonathan Taylor on the PUB list because, pretty sure Jonathan really doesn't want to play, and the Colts who are looking to trade him, they don't want to risk any injury, and, they just want to find a trade for him, keep him put out, and just so they can figure things out behind the scenes. Nextly to defensive stud Von Miller with the Bills. Obviously, Von Miller had an injury that put him out for the entirety of last season, and they put him on the PUB list, which he's still recovering from his injury. I'm pretty sure that he should be back this time, sometime this year, and I'll say just around the midway mark through the season. Now, I do think that'll hurt the Bills' pass rush, as it is a little suspect without Von Miller there, but I do think they'll be able to keep float and manage and still be a pretty good team without him until he comes back. Now, he will be needed once it gets to crunch time and then the season starts to wane, seeding starts to play a big factor, and the playoffs come around. But I'm pretty sure he'll be back before then, barring any setbacks. So if you're a Bills fan, you don't got to worry too much. You just hope Von Miller comes back and be the same Von Miller as we know him to be. And now with quarterback Kyler Murray for the Cardinals. Now with Kyler Murray, I think that's a very much more interesting situation regarding the fact that the Colts have made a lot of questionable decisions that have been coming off as they're not trying to really compete this year, being that they cut veteran quarterback Colt McCoy. And as to our expectations, they will be starting their new quarterback they traded for, Josh Dobbs. But Josh Dobbs hasn't even been there for a week yet. And, if you name him the starter, then it's going to be really bad because he hasn't had enough time to really mesh and gel with the playbook, with his teammates. And, it just comes off as an unserious team this year as they just really looking forward to next year's draft. When you look at that, when you got a big star and a guy named like Caleb Williams, who is a star quarterback, right now is looking like the consensus number one for the upcoming draft class. It's pretty interesting the fact that they still have Kyler Murray and what they're going to do with that whole situation. And if Kyler Murray does come back this year, if he becomes healthy this year, will he play? Will he be traded before the end of the season? Will he be traded after the end of the season? Will they keep Kyler Murray? And it's a whole situation that I think is going to be pretty interesting to see how it plays out. But, we'll see how it goes on and, we'll update you as things happen. And with another interesting situation, the Patriots cut Bailey Zappi and Malik Cunningham, their two backup quarterbacks, and which left Mac Jones to be the only quarterback on the depth chart, for about a day or two. But, they recently just picked up Matt Corral and they just signed Bailey Zappi to the practice squad. And before they did all that, it was pretty suspect as to why, they cut Bailey Zappi, somebody who seemed to be pretty decent for a backup when he came in and played. But obviously, they put him down to the practice squad after cutting him. And, they're bringing in Matt Corral, who was still fairly young and, was a pretty touted player coming out of college. And he was just drafted, last year. And he was recently just cut by the Panthers as he didn't make the final roster. And now with everything going on with the Patriots, when you look at, having Mac Jones there, bringing in Matt Corral, I don't expect much. I just The only thing I would expect out of the Patriots this year is to just hope they can be somewhat competent, and I think they will be a tough challenge for their division. But overall, I don't really see them being too competitive. I think it'll be a surprise if they make the playoffs, because I don't expect much out of them this year. I feel like they're still in a stage to where they have Mac Jones, who is a good quarterback, but he's not great. He's not an elevator, a guy who can elevate different positions and just bring the best out of somebody else. I feel like to get the best out of Mac Jones, you have to put the best around Mac Jones, because he's a guy who, if you give him great things to work with, he can do great things. We've seen back in his days at Alabama, and this year, their receiving core isn't really all that great. Their defense, obviously, I think will be, a little better and, still competent. But, overall, I just don't expect much out of the Patriots this year. But, who knows? It's Bill Belichick, an all-time coach, and Mac Jones, who was a pretty decent, competent quarterback. So, who knows what can happen. It'll be interesting to see what Bill Belichick comes up with and, how he does it this year. Moving on to the next piece. The Colts have named Anthony Richardson an official captain of the team. He's been voted on by the players to be a captain. I think that just goes to show, at least in his young years, Anthony Richardson will be competent from a cognitive standpoint and just a maturity standpoint. Because if you've seen Anthony Richardson, you see the way he speaks, how he talks to the media, different reports coming about his character. It's very telling that he has a certain level of maturity that is just, it's just terrific to see from a quarterback that young. And that's a guy that you're willing to take your time with and build with, as guys like that, guys who show maturity like that at a young age and who are going to be franchise pieces to your team. Those are culture setters. They set the tone for the team, the locker room, and I think those are things that's just over time, it's just going to elevate the team. I'm looking forward to see what Anthony Richardson does with his career at the Colts. This season, I wouldn't be surprised if they get a good amount of games under their belt. I do expect some ups and downs. I don't expect him to be amazing out the gate, but from what I've seen from Anthony Richardson and just how highly I think of him at the moment, I think he won't look as bad as some people would expect him to be, but I also wouldn't expect him to be amazing right now, if that makes sense. But let me know down below, how many games do you think the Colts can win with Anthony Richardson being the QB1? And do you think Anthony Richardson will finish the season off as QB1? Being that maybe he's a young rookie, he might have a bad stretch of games and he might get benched. That is possible. I knock on wood for that. I hope the guy, does great and keeps improving. But you never know. So let me know down below what you think and what do you see the Colts doing with the future. And yesterday, in some more polarizing news, it was reported that Joe Burrow was officially back at practice. And if you're a Bengals fan, that's great news, because if you aren't familiar, Joe Burrow was carted off the field in practice a couple weeks ago, and there was a lot of concerns about how long will he be out, how serious is the injury, as it was listed as only a calf injury at that time. But it has come out that it's not that serious, and he's back at practice, and eventually he will be back. Now the question is, when will he be back? As some speculate that he'll be able to go week 1 with the competitor he is, but he might also take some time to get completely healthy, and he might not be back until maybe week 4 or 5, or who knows. Now the last thing I wanted to talk about and get more in depth in is the Chris Jones situation. If you aren't familiar with the Chris Jones situation, star defensive lineman Chris Jones has been holding out from the Kansas City Chiefs as he looks to get a massive contract extension, and as they go through negotiations. If you want to get fully caught up with the entire story, go check out our website at brownsportsreport.com, where we posted a full entire story and overview of just what happened and just what's going on with the Chris Jones situation. But back to here, assuming that you've read the report, Chris Jones holding out and threatening to hold out all the way up until week 8 is not good if you're a Chiefs fan. Now obviously they have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce, so they're not going to be horrible, and they're not going to take a nosedive down or any significant decline. But I think it is huge, being that Chris Jones is the anchor and the heartbeat of that defense, and that will have massive ramifications on their entire defense this year for however long he holds out. And each and every day it gets more and more concerning that the deal isn't getting done, and no credible reports have come out stating that they've been getting any closer or any more, or coming close to reaching a deal. I think for the future, for however long he holds out this year, and just for the future of Chris Jones being the Kansas City Chief, I think it is very interesting and very concerning if you're a Chiefs fan. But don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below if there's anything you felt like I left out or anything that I could have reported on that you would like to see potentially in the next video. But besides that, my name is Ojari Brown. This was another episode of On the Daily. Peace.